Hello, everybody. Good afternoon from Spain. Good morning, evening, or night in the other parts of the world. This is Ricardo Sastre Martin, and for me, it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you today in ProjeXplorer. Thank you very much, PMI Bulgaria chapter, for the organization of this event, that is the largest project management conference in Europe, and for inviting me to this edition. And I'm here for talking about the future, in this case about the future of the PMO. The presentation is divided in 4 different parts. First, we'll have a quick look to my biography, to my career. Then we'll talk about transformation and why, in my opinion, the future is linked to transformation, continuous transformation. Afterwards, we'll move to the scenario planning tool. That is the tool I use for envisioning the future. And we'll close the session with an exercise where we'll use the scenario planning tool and we'll try to envision the future of our own PMO. Then let's start the session with my biography. As said before, my name is Ricardo Sastre Martin, and I want to share with you 3 main points from my career. The first one is that I have more than 20 years of professional experience, where I have been leading projects, programs, portfolios, and PMOs in more than 40 countries, in 4 continents, in Europe, America, Africa, and Asia. And the main learning I want to share with all of you is that all the projects are different. It doesn't matter if you are executing the same scope, the project will be different because the stakeholders will be different, the environment will be different, the conditions will be different every time we execute a project, even if the scope is the same. And as well, another learning that we all know in the PMO world is that there are not 2 PMOs alike. What is the same that saying that the PMOs are all different. And why do we bring this here? Because we're going to talk about the future. And if the PMOs are not the same now, of course, in my opinion, the future will be different for all of us. And I will explain later why. The second point I bring here about my career is that I was the former head of the Telefónica Customer Experience PMO that has been awarded this year, before I moved to another company, as the top 4 PMO of Europe at the PMO Global Awards 2021. And I bring this topic here because the story of this PMO is really great. It's a PMO I founded 7 years ago. When I joined the company, Telefónica, they were trying to transform the social network that they were operating under the 20 brand into a mobile network operator that was planned to be expanded to South America. It was currently offering mobile services in Spain, and the goal was to expand and offer the services in the different Telefónica markets. And when I joined the company had never seen any project manager because it was a product-oriented company. There were product managers, designers, people from marketing, but they had never worked with a project manager. So imagine when I was telling them that I was there for building a PMO, what did they say? What is a PMO? So nobody knew what was a PMO. In fact, many of them didn't know what was a project manager. But offering services and providing value, the story was that we started to grow. I started to hire people. We changed our scope as well because the 20 project was very successful. Then the Telefónica top management decided to increase the scope of our organization, and then we even changed our name. Our new name was Digital Telco Experience, where we were working with the main brands in parallel with the mobile 20 brands in South America in the expansion. And afterwards, we increased our services. We had a lot of success, and we were given by our top management at Telefónica new responsibilities, and we changed the name to Telefónica Customer Experience, and we were responsible for the omni-channel customer experience projects for all Telefónica brands. And this is a journey of transformation, but it's a journey of organizational transformation, because it was the organization itself that the one that was evolving. So we were growing, we were increasing scope, we were getting additional tasks, we were providing additional services. So it was a transformation that was led by the organization. And the sample I bring about personal transformation is that this year I decided to move to Microsoft, to the role of principal consulting project management. And the reason why I decided to move to this role and to this company is because I work in the cloud and artificial intelligence domain that, in my opinion, as we'll see later, is one of the areas that is going to be key in our future, not only for the PMOs, if not for our lives. I think that artificial intelligence has a tremendous power and is going to impact our future, hopefully for good, but we have to take care, because as Microsoft is doing, we have regulations in order to assure that artificial intelligence is applied to use cases for good. But we'll see later more about this. So here I am talking about the future. So many of you at this point will be thinking, okay, he has a crystal ball and he's going to tell us what is going to happen in the future. And that's why I bring this slide here. As you say, this is a crystal ball, but the hands that you can see there are not humans. They are from a robot. So what do I want to mean? It's linked to the point I was telling you before. The artificial intelligence is very, very powerful. I'm involved in projects where we are applying artificial intelligence for different use cases, and it's very, very powerful if there is data. And maybe in the future, or not even in the future now, it's currently doing it can predict the future. And it will be something that we'll be using in our PMOs, but we'll see that later. But before moving to the topic of artificial intelligence, I want to remind to all of you that we have a very powerful tool that we as project managers and PMO leaders, all of us know, that is the risk management. Risk management as well is a kind of technique that we use in our projects, where we try to anticipate to the future and try to apply different strategies based on what we think is going to happen in the future. And this is something that is very powerful, and we are not fully exploring, in my opinion. Because if we look back to the past, to the year 2019, to the month of November, where we can start reading in the newspapers that there is some kind of virus in China, and there are some cases, and it seems that is quite impacting the population in China and so on. How many of you at that point did include that virus, that I'm not sure if it was even called COVID at that time or it was later, to your risk logs? How many of you did you think that it was going to impact not only our projects or our PMOs, if not our world, at the way that it is doing it, and it has been doing it during this last year and a half? I guess that not many of you. But if we go back to the past, to the year 2020, to February, and we can read in the news that this virus that was in China a few months ago is now spreading and is now in different countries in Europe. I'm talking about Europe because it's the case I know better because I live in Spain, in Europe. So I remember that we were reading that there were already some cases in Germany, for example. And how many of you at that point were already as well considering that as a risk in your risk log? And which one is the impact that you were estimating for this virus? I'm pretty sure that most of us, for me, I'm going to be frank, I was not able to predict the impact that this virus was going to have in our world. And it's something that now is the opportunity to bring back our knowledge from the past about what has happened and make use of the risk management, because risk management is a tool that we already know how it works, but we have to make it applicable to all our projects, and we have to be constantly working on it and try to engage to all the teams in order to try to identify different risks that it may impact our PMOs and our projects. And if you do this with diverse teams, it will be richer, the identification analysis, because you will have views from many different people that will be able to see risks, identify risks that maybe from your knowledge, your background, or your way of thinking, you cannot do by yourself. So this is something that is going to be very important for the future. It's in fact already for the present, that is to work in diverse teams. As we have seen before, there are different kinds of transformation. Making use of my own personal career, I brought two types of transformation. The ones that is decided by you, by yourself, that is the decisions you make for changing. And the another one is the one that is not decided by you, but is kind of imposed because of the environment or the organization you work for. And some of you will be wondering, why am I talking about transformation if the session is about the future? And for that, in order to show you the link between the future and the transformation, I'm going to make use of this infographic that is from the book Homo Sapiens, written by Yuval Noah. This infographic has been shared by Reading Graphics for me for this session, so I'm very thankful to them for sharing this fantastic graphic where we can see very easily why the transformation and change is linked to the past and as well to the future. As you can see here in the picture, there are different revolutions that Yuval talks about in the book. If we look at the first milestone, 2.5 million years ago, that was the point where the first species of Homo appeared. If we go to the next milestone, that is already 0.2 million years ago, that is when it's believed to have appeared the first Homo sapiens. And from there, we go forward to just 70,000 years ago, where it started what Yuval calls the cognitive revolution. From then, we have 12,000 years ago, the start of the agricultural revolution. And only 500 years ago, it was when the scientific revolution started. And the point is that this last revolution, the scientific one, is the one that has brought more changes in these years, only in 500 years, that all the previous revolutions and history of our world. That, as you can see here, is around 2.5 million years ago when it started. But if we take a deeper look into these last 500 years, we'll see that the first revolution happened in the year 1784. Then the second industrial revolution was in the year 1870. The third industrial revolution was in the 1979, and now we are on what is called the Industry 4.0, that some business industries are on, for others is still something that they have not explored. So the main point here in the slide is that if you check the gap between the different industries, revolutions, you will see that every time the revolution, the next one, takes less years to happen compared to the previous one. So this means that the pace of change is increasing every time, every year. And now there is already people talking about the Industry 5.0, when most of the countries and industries have still very incipient Industry 5.0 stage, but we are already talking, listening to the Industry 5.0 concept. And even for me, between the 4.0 and the 5.0, it has happened another revolution, not industrial, but it's the COVID revolution, because during this year and a half that we have been under the COVID, we have had the highest rate of adoptions and plans of digitalization in the world, and not only in the big companies, not that well in small business embark on digital transformation journeys or reskilling programs for their employees. And what is this Industry 5.0? For that, let me bring to you the definition that the European Union is giving to the Industry 5.0. So as you can see, the concept for the European Union is that the Industry 5.0 provides a vision of industry that aims beyond efficiency and productivity as the sole goals, and reinforce the role and the contribution of industry to the society. It places the well-being, yes, you can read again, the well-being of the worker at the center of the production process, and use new technologies to provide prosperity beyond jobs and growth while respecting the production limits of the planet. It complements the existing Industry 4.0 approach by specifically putting research and innovation at the service of the transition to a sustainable, human-centric, and resilient European industry. What do you think about this definition? Do you like this Industry 5.0? Is it an utopia? Well, we'll see. It's one of the potential features that we may have. As the pace of change is dramatically increasing, as we have seen before, every time it's becoming more and more difficult to be able to predict the future. But in my opinion, what this seems clear is that artificial intelligence will be part of our future. And it's not just a personal opinion, because as you can write in the slide, Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, for him, AI is not just another piece of technology, it could be one of the world's most fundamental pieces of technology the human race has ever created. As I said before, AI is very, very powerful. But to what extent will AI be part of our future? Because I guess some of you, or maybe most of you, have read the report that Gartner wrote some years ago, where they were predicting that in the year 2030, around 80% of our PMO and project management tasks will be taken over by AI. So is this a possible future scenario? Yes, it could be. It could be. We have the Industry 5.0 scenario. Another scenario could be that the AI takes over 80% of our tasks. So working in the AI domain for Microsoft, I can tell you that this technology is very powerful, as Satya mentions. And as I said before, it's very powerful for good and for bad. And that means that there will be AI regulations that as well will determine our future, because they will determine the limits of the AI. So looking back to this report from Gartner, 2030 is 9 years from now, almost 8, because now we are ending the 2021 year. So in the research I have been doing regarding AI applied to project management and to PMOs, I identify two different main blocks of AI. The first block is the one related to automation, and the second block is the one related to prediction. For the automation, I have seen already some tools and software, and even some companies already making use of some ways to automate the tasks. But in regards to the prediction, when I talk about the prediction, I refer to be able to predict the risks, predict the schedule at the end of the project, predict the financials. I have not seen yet any tool that is really predicting making use of AI. Maybe if any of you is already aware of any of these tools, or even if you are using it, please at the end of the session, please contact me, please reach me, because I'm very interested in this area. I would like to hear from you about the tools that you know that are already making use of AI and provides prediction. And in my opinion, the reason why prediction is not yet exploited is because the AI relies on data, at least for the initial trainings. And this is one of the main barriers for the application of AI. That is that currently in the project management PMO world, there is not a structured data that can be used for training the AI. All of you know that it's a real challenge in our PMOs to be able to collect all the lessons learned, all the information, all the data from the past projects, so we can make use of them for the future ones and learn from our experience in other projects. But this is not just a matter of collecting data and information, if not that it needs to be structured, because if it's not structured, we cannot train the models, the AI models. And that is one of the main barriers that I see right now. For me, in just 8 years, it's going to be quite challenging that we'll have a data structure available for training AI. But as we have seen that the future and the change is dramatically increasing every year, I will not be surprised if in the year 2030 we already have tools that are able to predict risks or financials or schedule. I think we're still far from there, but it's something that is achievable for sure. What I have seen already working for Microsoft, as you can see in this slide, is the evolution of autonomous systems. The first step was that autonomous systems did not have any intelligence capability. It was the humans deciding. Then we moved to the intelligent insights, where the system provides insights, but is the human the one that decides and acts. Then we move to the assistive capability, where the system and humans work and act together. And now I'm already involved in Microsoft in the delivery of a program that is related to autonomous capability, where is the machine itself the one that decides and acts independently of the humans. And this is already a reality. It's a program I'm already delivering for one of our main customers in Microsoft. And as I see that this is something feasible, that is real, that's why I say that maybe it's not something crazy what Gartner says, that in the 2030, 80% of our tasks will be taken over by AI. But we have to be all aligned that there is a main challenge, that is the lack of data for being able to do this. And the future, one scenario could be like this one, like the one of this Steven Spielberg movie, where with these glasses you were able to go into a parallel world. And when I was talking about this just a few weeks ago, it was something like very futuristic. But now that Facebook had changed the name and the strategy, and it's called now Meta, and as well, you can see that after that, other companies like Microsoft is already as well talking about metaverse and announcing the features they are going to launch soon regarding metaverse. This is not now like a very futuristic scenario. It's something that it could happen as well. In fact, I don't know if you are aware that already some industries, maybe the ones that are in the industrial sector, are already using this kind of glasses for training people and for being able to operate factories remotely. Because with this, you can support the person and guide them about what do they have to do based on different parameters that are happening at that specific point in the plant, in the factory. So could this be another scenario for us, for project managers and PMOs? We'll see. There is one key point I want to share with you. That is one of the conclusions of my session. That is that the technology is here and it's going to keep evolving, and there will be things that we cannot even imagine right now. So it's up to us, or up to the world, the society, the use we make of this technology. Because the future, I don't know how it will be. There will be many different potential scenarios possible. But what is clear is, as I said before, that the future is linked to transformation, that in the future there will be much more technology, much more advanced technology than we have now. So it's going to depend mainly on what is the use we make of this technology as human beings. The one that will determine the different scenarios that we can have in our future and in our PMOs. And about the PMOs being here in the center of the picture, as you can see, we are influenced by the environment. Not only about the environment, but as well about the different areas of our company. So going to the first cycle, we see that we have the management, the operations, research and development, finance, marketing, sales. They are our customers. So we, in our PMO, we offer services to them. They are our customers. Even if they are our colleagues, we have to have the mindset that all people to who we provide services in our PMOs are our customers. So here, if the management change, so the operations have a different need, or research provides a new technology, or the finance department tell us that there are restrictions, constraints that are going to impact our portfolios, our PMOs. So we are influenced by our customers. So if the customer changes, we need to change and adapt and provide services based on the needs they have every time. But if we go outside of our organization, we see that we are influenced by the environment. We have the economic environment, legal environment, technological, global, social, competitive. So even if our company does not change intentionally, the environment changes. If the environment changes, the company needs to adapt to that new environment, to those changes. And if the environment changes and the company changes, our PMOs need to change. And we have seen that during this last year and a half of the pandemic, everybody, environment, companies, organizations, all of us had to adapt to the new reality. So that means that as we are in our PMOs, even if we are very successful now, we cannot remain static and think that as we are successful now, we'll be successful tomorrow and forever. If we don't change and the circles around us, our companies, our environment change, will not be probably offering the services that they need and will lose value. And if we lose value, will not be competitive anymore, and they may decide to close our PMO. So we need to be very aware of the changes and try to advance and predict how are going to be the changes in the environment and our organization, so we can be prepared for them and we can even lead the changes. And change is not something new that is happening now. So as I said before, change has been happening around all the history of the humankind. The only point is that every year the change is increasing the pace. And Heraclitus in the 500 before Christ, he already said that change is the only constant. That I don't agree completely, because for me this is not constant anymore. It's true that change is happening and will keep happening forever, but it's not going to happen in a constant way. It's variable, and as seen before, this variable is increasing every year. So every year the pace of change is increasing. And now that we have created awareness that the future is linked to transformation, the transformation is linked to change, and that every year the pace of change is dramatically increasing, let's move to the next session, that is the scenario planning tool, where I will show you the tool that I use for envisioning the future of my PMO. There's one thing that is a fact, well known in the history, that is that knowledge is power. And we have seen that before, related as well to AI, where the AI needs data. If there's no data, there's no way to train the models. And the same is for us. If we don't have knowledge, if we don't have information, we cannot predict the future. And that was already known by Socrates when he said, the only thing I know is that I know nothing. If we look deeper into what Socrates said, we can identify three different classes of knowledge: the things we know, the things we know we don't know, and the things we don't know that we don't know. And this is one of the main reasons why we have to do the scenario planning exercise using this tool in diverse things, because in this way it will help us to reduce our personal bias, overconfidence, and under and over prediction. So let's go to the tool, different steps that we have to follow for using the tool. The first step is to define the scope of what are we trying to predict. In this case, in our case, the future of our PMO. It's very important as well to define the time frame. That is not the same to do the exercise and try to predict the future of my PMO next year than the future in 10 years. Then the second step is to identify the stakeholders. Who has interest on this? Who will be affected by the future of my PMO? And I'm pretty sure that all of you have your stakeholders identified. Therefore, this step 2 is very straightforward for you because you already have all this information. The step 3 is to study the past. Which one is the journey of your PMO? How were the PMOs in the past? And for that, apart from your historical data, you can have a look to books like this one, the Project Management Office, A Quest for Understanding, that provides some clues about how and why the PMOs are changing. This book was published in 2010, but I can tell you that if you read it now, you may think that it was just released. Next step is to list the trends. And for that, you can make use of a conference like this one, where for sure you will get 7 ideas about the trends that are coming, read articles, research, and so on. So for today, I just bring to you some of them that you have to take into account. Like, for example, we were talking at the beginning about risk management, about artificial intelligence with the 2 different areas, automation, prediction, as well, agile, digital transformation skills, remote working, resilience, project management as a role or as a skill, strategy implementation gap, digital skills, innovative mindset, human skills, sustainability, and many, many more trends that for sure in this conference you will get a lot that you can get as an input for your analysis. And the next step is to identify the uncertainties in the different areas. As we saw before, we are influenced by the environment. So we are influenced by the competition, by legal, by global environment, by social, by economics, by technological changes. So we have to try to identify in each of the areas uncertainties. And once you have identified the different trends and uncertainties, you have the main ingredients for making different scenarios. A simple approach is to identify, for example, string walls by putting all positive elements in one side and all the negatives in another one. So therefore, what you have to do is to mix the trends with uncertainties, and in this way, based on the probability of each of them, you will have different scenarios that will or may apply to your PMO, depending on the circumstances that will happen in the future. And once you have the different scenarios, you will be able to define your PMO strategy. First, from all the scenarios, you will have to choose which one is the one you think that you want to pursue or that you think is going to be more probable to the uncertainties and global trends. And in that way, as you will envision how is that scenario going to be, you will be able to define your strategy, how to be prepared for going to that feature that you are envisioning in that particular scenario, or even in different scenarios. So the main use and benefits of this tool, the scenario planning tool, is that it allows you to identify early warning signals. You can assess the robustness of your core competencies. You can generate better strategic options, and you can evaluate risk, return profile of each of the different options, different scenarios. And as the best way to understand how this tool works is with a real example, let's go to the last part of the session and do a practical exercise where we will try to envision the future based on 2 different variables. For the exercise, we are going to make use of 2 different variables for showing you how this scenario planning tool works. The 2 variables are artificial intelligence and the pandemic. And in order to gather more information about both, one thing I recommend is to read newspaper and watch TV and the news and videos from reference people. And in this case, I'm bringing 2, one for each. Let's go first with Yuval Noah for artificial intelligence.
When you have enough data, you don't need to send soldiers to control a country. The AI revolution might create unprecedented inequality, not just between classes, but also between countries.
And for the pandemic, let's listen to the Prime Minister of New Zealand a few months ago.
The health advice has been that to date we've managed to largely control the outbreak, but as you can see with this outbreak and with Delta, the return to zero is incredibly difficult. And our restrictions alone are not enough to achieve it quickly. In fact, for this outbreak, it's clear that long periods of heavy restrictions has not got us to 0 cases. But that is okay. Elimination was important because we didn't have vaccines. Now we do. So we can begin to change the way we do things. We have more options, and there's good cause for us to feel optimistic about the future. But we cannot rush.
And based on those two variables, the AI taking over or not, and the COVID-19 getting new variants or finally disappearing from our life, we can identify 4 different scenarios. In the case that the COVID-19 finally disappears and the AI does not take over our tasks, our roles, the scenario could be called back to the old normal. In the case that the COVID-19 gets a new variant, like it's in the case now with Omicron, but AI does not take over our tasks, we can call that scenario welcome to the new normal. In case that COVID-19 disappears from our life finally, but the AI takes over some of our tasks, we can call that scenario Industry 5.0. And in the case that COVID-19 keeps living with us forever with new variants, and the AI takes over, I have called this scenario Terminator, like the famous Schwarzenegger movie. A scenario back to the normal. It could be, for example, that the COVID-19 is eradicated, AI does not evolve, and there are not AI applications that can be used in the project management PMO field. Companies decide that all the employees should go back to work to the offices as in the past, and digitalization investments are put on hold. In the scenario welcome to the new normal, the COVID-19 keeps living with us, mutating, creating new variants that are resistant to the vaccines. That limits again our mobility as restrictions are imposed by the government. Companies allow to the employees to keep working from home some days per week. International travel is restricted. In the scenario Industry 5.0, AI has evolved and has taken over from the human beings the repetitive tasks and the ones related to prediction like risk identification, scheduling, financial control, etc. The human beings work together with the machines, being able to spend more time on building relationships with the stakeholders. Well-being of the worker is at the center of the production process and use new technologies to provide prosperity between jobs and growth while respecting the production limits of the planet. And finally, the scenario Terminator. New COVID-19 variants keep evolving while AI has taken over most of the human tasks. We have eventually created a technology that gives birth to our own stations. The Terminators control the world. Based on these different scenarios, where you envision a different feature, things that could happen in that scenario, is when you can prepare your PMO strategy for each of them, for the one that you think is going to be more probable, or for several of them, having different backup strategies, having the main strategy and a backup in case that the scenario that finally happens is a different one from the one that we establish as the most probable. And this was all for the session for today. I just want to bring 4 points as a summary. The first is that the future is uncertain. The pace of change is increasing. We have to visualize different future scenarios and get prepared for them. So thank you very much for watching the session, and now let's move to the Q&A.
Hey, Ricardo, thank you very much for your crystal ball and all of ideas that shows from it. It was really interesting presentation. What most impressed us, me and the audience into the Hoover, is regarding the artificial intelligence, and we are interested to understand your point of view, how artificial intelligence will impact PMO and how the technologies and automation will impact the traditional PMO role.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, as said in the session, I think there are two main blocks. One is the automation of the tasks, and another one is predictions. Basically, as all PMOs are different, we all provide different services because we have different stakeholders, different customers. It's going to depend much on our particular case. So depending on the services you are providing, if the services you are providing are related to things that could be replaced by automation, like, for example, doing reporting, then you have to try to look for different services that you can provide to your customers and provide value, because those ones will be replaced. But anyhow, for me, what is key, and it's very important to mention here, is that what I envision is that the most probable feature is that we have the support of the AI for helping us to do our job in a better way, in a more efficient way. So if the AI is going to help us with automate tasks that can be automated, that's going to be a spare time that we have for involving our team in more value-added activities that in this case are going to be always human-related activities, because as you know, project management is 80% communication. So everything that we invest in building relation with our customers, let's say, is time that we are getting for increasing the value of our PMO. Therefore, what I would propose is that, as we have seen in the scenario planning tool, as there is one scenario that is maybe there will be technology that will replace the automation, or even there will be some technology that will predict the risk or the schedule or the financials, that we get prepared in advance for it. So, for example, if we are providing services that we think are going to be replaced by this technology, we have to start working right now with our customers in identifying additional services that they need and we can provide to them, and keep adding value and make use of the technology for helping us to do our job in a better way. That is going to be something beneficial for the PMOs and for the companies at the end.
Last question from the studio, very interesting. Thank you for answering the previous one. What is your take on the transition of PMO into value management office?
Yeah, the PMO, the P means different things for different people. So at the beginning it was a project program portfolio. For me, it has been always people, because in fact, one of the key elements why the PMO I was leading in Telefonica has been awarded as one of the top PMOs in Europe. It has been because of the communication activities we were doing. So we were like breaking the silos, and we were the glue, let's say, in the company. So for me, P is people. But what is something, it doesn't not matter if we call the PMO Agile PMO, or value PMO, or a strategic PMO, or enterprise PMO. So for me, all the PMOs at the end, they have to provide value. So we are an organization that we provide services, and as such, we have to provide value. So for me, to call it value is something that is, let's say, redundant. For me, the PMO, whatever we are calling it, has to provide value to the organization. Because if we don't provide value, then we are not going to survive. So we need to be always looking for ways to provide value to our customers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution to our session today. We opened the stage on the topic regarding the PMOs. A very good beginning of this stream. We continue in the next session with another speakers related to PMO. Thank you again, Ricardo. It was a pleasure to have you here on the stage of PMI Bulgaria chapter in our conference.
Thanks to you. Thanks for the invitation.